Whether you're watching, listening or reading this, welcome back to the Runpreneur vlog, where we're on a mission to raise £1 million for children's charities by run vlogging on consecutive days the distance of one lap around the world. It is a staggering 40,075 kilometres. It's going to take somewhere in the region of 11 years to accomplish, so plenty of time to raise the money. I'm going to commit to running at least 5 kilometres every day whilst I do a vlog at the same time, and I'll even do it barefoot style. So it's a beautiful morning today. It's quite fresh. The sun's just trying to burn through the clouds. It's about 6 degrees, so not too cold. And it is Monday Motivation today, where we talk about all things motivation and productivity based. And today's topic is the cord productivity model. So as always, please show this channel some support and give it a subscribe and a like, and let's get started. The cord productivity model. Now when we're spelling cord, it's C for Charlie, O for Oscar, R for Romeo, D for Delta. So that's how we spell it. And it's ultimately, what is it? It's a productivity kind of template or model or framework to kind of help you understand the inputs and the outputs required to be productive. I found this to be really useful. Okay, now I've been somebody who studies productivity for years. It's something that I've always had an immense interest for, is how you can work smarter, not harder, how you can accomplish more for doing less. You know, that's stuff that I've talked about. Bill Gates' famous quote: if I have a really difficult job to do, I find a lazy person to do it, because the lazy person will find an easy way to accomplish the same goal. Okay, now there is a caveat to that you do get lazy people that just don't want to do anything, but you also get those smart lazy people, and this is the category I like to think that I fall within. I'm constantly scrutinising what I do to work out how I can do it better without the same or without as much effort. And I think if you have that mindset, this being smart lazy, it's a really, really useful place to be, because it strongly enhances your problem solving abilities as a person, as an entrepreneur. So back to the cord productivity model. So ultimately, what does it stand for? Okay, well, it's obviously an acronym. So what does it stand for? Well, C is capture and collect, O is organise, R is review, and D is do. Okay, so I'll go through each of these in order now. Now, it's in this order how this productivity model works. I'll explain a little bit of detail about each, and then I'll give you an example of how I use this model every single day in my personal and professional life. And then hopefully there's enough inspiration there for you to want to do something similar in your world. So, capture and collect. Okay, this is inputs. In today's world, we're just surrounded by information and communication and cues and things that we need to kind of deal with or process that will either result in actions or result in something that needs to be logged and stored for future reference. And if you don't have a mechanism in place for this, you'll end up just forgetting things, because your mind can only process so much information at a given time. So ultimately you need this kind of capture and collect model so that nothing gets missed. So what we're talking about here is that when emails come in, how they can be captured, collected. Okay, so you've got an email inbox, but inbound communications. Okay, so text messages, social media messages, WhatsApps, all these types of things that come in. We're talking about people phoning you up or calling you. Okay, how do you capture the information that comes within a phone call? Okay, you've got people talking to you. How do you capture information and collect it when someone comes over to speak to you? You know, when you get post sent, if there's something, how do you capture and collect that so that you can find it in the future when you need it? Okay, so and this is just a few examples. There are so many more than this, but it's input. So everything that kind of comes to you, if you look at it and think, well, you're like at the top of the funnel and you are the filtering mechanism, all of this stuff's just getting dropped in the funnel and you're having to deal with it at the rate that it's arriving. And if you don't have something in place, it'll feel like you're spinning plates. You're constantly moving on to the next thing, trying to remember this, trying to remember that, and you just find yourself to be more of a busy fool. So that's the capture and collect stage. It's how you capture this information, collect it, store it somewhere so that nothing gets missed. Once you have that mechanism in place, it just almost immediately alleviates and removes a significant portion of overwhelm. And the reason for that is that obviously there's so much stuff happening, but it's not getting missed. So it stops you worrying, it stops you feeling overwhelmed about all the things that are going on. So really an important stage is capture and collect. The next one is organise. All these stages are equally as important, okay? They work in tandem with one another to enable you to be productive. And the organise stage is super, super important. Okay, so it's all good and well capturing and collecting all the inputs, okay? But you then need to have an organisation or a prioritisation process for processing that information, because if you're capturing and collecting everything, there's going to be stuff there you don't need to do, but you do it because you don't want to miss out in case it is something that is capturing and collecting. So you need an organisation. It's like a set of rules that your inputs kind of comply with, so that, for example, it could be an email comes in with an invoice, right? The rule could be that it goes to the accountant, so it doesn't even have to be brought to your attention. So you could create an auto-forwarding rule, or you could have a PA process. That's just an example of how these kind of rules can be set. And you might get somebody talk to you about educational material that comes through online. Okay, now you might not want to do anything with that, but you might want to store that for reference, so that at some point in the future, when you are going to put aside some time for self-development, if you want to go through your educational material captured, just spend some time on it. Okay, so again, that rule needs to be in place. It's like phone calls. If somebody's taking your calls, we've got an outsourced phone call system, how can they be logged and stored, and what are the rules associated with it? If it's family and friends, it might come to you. If it's a customer, it might go to, or a potential customer, it might get diverted to a sales team. All of these things that are just organising everything that comes in. And it sounds like a hugely arduous task, and it is to begin with. But this is why you kind of create these rules over the course of time. And we talk about the zero inbox analogy, okay? Now I do operate a zero inbox because I have somebody managing my inbox every day. So every time I look at my inbox later in the day, it's been reset back to zero because everything's been processed. That doesn't mean that there's no emails for my attention, but the ones that are, maybe 5 to 7 out of 500 a day, will get pushed into my task management software, where I will review those every day, and that's where I'll process them, okay? So, but saving me having to go through 500 emails is the prime example of how organisation can be absolutely game-changing to you, okay? So, what we also suggest is you have a kind of master to-do list, okay? So, this is where all your tasks are kind of stored. Now, you might have lots of sub-to-do lists as well, which feed into your master. So you might have project-based to-dos, etc. And you might use those to prioritise important projects, etc. But ultimately, all of the actions that you have should be stored in a master list. And we'll come on to the next stage in a second. So hopefully you understand that Organise is all about the rules, the prioritisation, the organisation of the information that is captured and collected. So important. If you capture and collect and you don't have the organised system set up, or in the process of being set up, again, you'll be super overwhelmed because, okay, you're not as overwhelmed for forgetting things, but you'll be overwhelmed for having too many things to deal with. Okay, so that's where organisation, or the organised section, is so important. So the next stage is R, which is review. Okay, now this is really, really important, because what you'll find is to begin with, your master to-do list will be ridiculously long, and it's only through gradual progression of actually implementing more and more organised rules that the number of to-dos will actually start to drop and fall. Okay, but that does take time, and you're normally looking at least 2 weeks to a month to actually make a noticeable difference, and it might be several months before you get it to the stage that you want to be, but it's something you have to persevere with. So the R stage is the review. Now this is the daily and the weekly review of your master to-do list, okay? And this is where you're going to be planning what you're going to do, organising the stuff that's already been organised for your attention. It's organising the stuff for your attention for when you're going to do it, okay? And it's all going to work out, I'll just work through the list. Well, no, because there'll be stuff that's super urgent and really, really important that you get cracking with it immediately. And there'll be other stuff on there that's not really time sensitive. You can knock that back a few weeks and it won't really matter. So what you do here is you're putting a prioritisation of your workload. And again, this might come into play from your organised section of your process. But ultimately it's, right, tomorrow I'm going to do this. This week I'm going to accomplish this. And it's basically trying to give yourself an agenda of where your focus and attention is going to be in order to achieve your goals and milestones. Okay, so what we mean here is that your milestones or your goals that you've set yourself should always be linked to the activity that you're focusing on, and you want to do the stuff that's going to get you closer to those goals and milestones as a priority. Okay, that's generally how this is going to work. So that's the review, the kind of planning stage of your workload. And the final one is do. So this is where you're going to do the work that you've set yourself. Now, if you've gone through this process, you will have a process where it's a filtering mechanism. So the stuff you're actually doing is high level or super high importance that enhances your opportunity to achieve your goals and milestones. Okay, so this is the activity you do. However, with do doesn't mean you have to do it. It's like somebody has to do it. So there may be so many things still on your for your attention master to-do list that you can delegate or you can outsource to somebody else, i.e. anything financial within reason I pass off to my finance team to deal with. Okay, anything potential clients goes to the sales team. Okay, and I do work a little bit in the marketing side of the business because promotion of the business is so important. I like to have a holding and an involvement in that side of things, but most other things I'll pass off. So generally speaking, my role usually falls onto setting up systems and processes, and I always say the three things to grow and scale a business in equal importance are systems and processes, because businesses are built on them. People, automation will only get you so far. People will run the business. And data gives you the reporting capability to run a management by numbers operation, which I think is super important to ensure you're tracking and trending towards achieving your targets and milestones. So I try and make sure I'm focusing on those. I already have a data analyst as well who's producing reports for me, but I often scrutinise them with them to try and present the data in a more easier to understand or legible manner. So I constantly work with my reporting team to kind of get those things up. But generally speaking, I'll be looking at resourcing, I'll be looking at opportunities, I'll be looking at strategy, I'll be looking at pooling our resources and focusing on new tranches of income. So these are the things that are going to be linked to my goals and milestones. Okay, so anything outside that, in the do section, I'll delegate. I do have a team in place to do this, but you don't have to have a team. You can obviously outsource this to outside contractors or for example, a lot of people use an accountant and a bookkeeper. They may not be, part of your team as owned by your team ultimately, but they may be an outside consultancy firm or accounting firm that you outsource to. That's absolutely fine. And if you haven't got a team, start looking at outsourcing to remote workers or virtual assistants in places like the Philippines. You can get people for a handful of hours for kind of £3 to £4 an hour. Okay, so absolutely it's worth kind of looking at this to try and get yourself some support so that you can spend as much time as possible on the high level stuff. Okay, the stuff that's linked to goals and milestones. Anything else you want to be delegating. So hope that's a good explanation of what the cord model is. Now, if I explain to you now how I use this every single day in my world, it's hopefully it will give you some ideas and some inspiration for how you can tweak and iterate and tailor this to what you do. So capture and collect. Well, first and foremost, I'm paperless. So everything that comes in will be scanned into the system somewhere, so it's processed. So emails are one way of coming in, okay? I have a personal assistant who manages my email inbox. We have probably hundreds and hundreds of possibly thousands of rules now associated to different email addresses for when they come in, so that they're processed accordingly. So I will only see stuff that I have to see. And if it's a brand new email that we've never seen before, it will be passed over for my attention. And if it's something I don't want to see again, I'll create a rule for it. the PA will update the rules and I won't have to deal with that anymore. So this is how you go from getting 500 plus emails a day to only seeing 5 to 7 of them. So the time saving of that is monumental. I used to have my phone calls outsourced, but I've stopped doing it now because I used to get loads and loads of calls. I get very few now because you know, it's almost people realise they can't get hold of me by the phone anymore, so they send communication through other channels, which works for me. My inbound comms for social media is managed by a PA as well, so that again, you know, I will check this because I do try and be real on my social platforms, but if I'm not available, then my PA will be able to pick things up and kind of send, you know, holding responses and template responses that I've kind of created for her to respond in my tone of voice when I'm not around. So again, that sort of thing. My post, I scan the post in, the stuff that I need, I cull everything I don't need. Anything that's relevant, I just scan it into my Evernote setup that syncs with my task management so that the VAs process the post every single day. So again, stuff that's relevant for me will come to me, other stuff will be sent off via rules to other people within the team. So super important. But ultimately everything's being captured and collected. I use Evernote for quick notes. I use Voice Record Pro, an app on my watch for voice notes. So if I'm out and about and I need to note something down, I do it on there. I have my VAs go through my voice notes every week and process them for my content plan and also for actions and things that I need to do myself. So all of these sort of things are the systems and processes I've put in place, which just frees me up so I can capture everything and I know that everything will be processed. And if it's something that I've never processed before, if it's something for me, the rule is to mark it for my attention, but if it's not, I create a rule and somebody else deals with it. So that's just an example of how I use Evernote for basic notes. I have Otter AI for transcriptions, so if I want to talk something in an audio format and get it transcribed, I can do that. So all these things are super useful tools to capture information and collect it. Okay, so the next stage is the organise. Okay, so I've already said everything that kind of comes in as input, I use my team around me to process and manage it. So any post gets processed. There's rules attached to, you know, utility bills and invoices and things like that, which the finance guys deal with. But everything else the team will process and deal with, and only the things that are marked for my attention get through to me, and that gets through to my master to-do list. Same with emails, same with inbound social media comms, you know, same with anybody who needs to get hold of me. I always try and get it in writing so that it creates something that's tangible that can be processed rather than word of mouth. If it is word of mouth and I need to note it down, I quickly to record a voice note to capture whatever that was, and then that gets processed through the channels as well. So really important that you kind of have these things in place. So then it's the stuff that gets onto my to-do list and the review side of things. Well, I have a 10-minute task every day. It might sound it's like this is probably one of the only recurring tasks I have, whereby I just review what I've got coming up for the following day, and I'll just adjust my timeline, my agenda, based on the prioritization model that I've set myself, which is all product related. Project related. I have multiple projects that will be simultaneously worked on, and they are hierarchically ordered. So anything for project number 1 will generally be stuff that gets dealt with first, unless there's something painstakingly urgent and has to be done for a low level project. It will be done in project order. So I order the workload based on my energy levels. I know how my energies flow throughout the day, and I time block an agenda for the next day. So between 10 and 11 I'm doing this, between 12 and 1 I'm doing this, whatever. I'm having lunch here, I've got a meeting there. So I have an agenda set, and I've tried using a purchase system for this in the past, but I'm quite dynamic in my approach sometimes, and I like to make last minute changes. So I made the decision that I wanted to manage this process, and the accuracy is far better for me. I also do it at the end of the week, where I very loosely move stuff into next week's days. I don't worry about, you know, time blocking for that, because on the next, I will do on Friday evening I'll do Monday's agenda, but then I'll also put tasks into Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and as a loose agenda, so that when I'm sorting it next week, it becomes much easier. And these things take like 10 minutes to do every day, but they save you so much time without this process, I used to spend an hour or two every morning planning what I was going to do. 10 minutes at the end of the day saves 2 hours the next morning. So it's 100% worthwhile doing. So that's my review process. The next one I have is my do stage. Okay, so I use the 3 dots model. I've tried the various different prioritization models for this type of stuff, but this is bright green is high income generating activity, stuff that I need to be focusing on. Light green is low income generating activity. I will deal with a handful of these, but more often than not I'll be looking to delegate these off to the team. And then I have red dots, which are non-income generating activities, and it's really, really rare that I'll get involved in one of these, that I often push these out. So just that very quick dot mentality just gives me a quick reminder about the stuff that's really important in line with the projects that we're working on, and it also gives me a nudge to ensure that I continue to outsource and delegate stuff out, which is really, really important. So that's kind of how I do this. And then when I do, I've obviously got my agenda that's pre-planned from the previous day, and I don't always achieve everything on the agenda. I mean, people talk about the 60-40 rule. I know people talk about 80-20, but there's a 60-40 rule which says whatever you think you can accomplish in a day, you'll accomplish 60% of it. 40% of the time will be taken up by distractions of that. No matter how productive you are, people always set unrealistic expectations. I'm still the same, and you know what, that does ring true. The 80-20 Pareto's law is all about, 80% of the gain from 20% of the activity, or 80% of the problems from 20% of the problems. You can start applying these principles to help you set realistic expectations. But that's how I do it every single day without fail. It takes very little to kind of operate once you've got, the time consuming parts is the capture collecting side of things, having processes and systems in place for that. But in a world where technology is so advanced now, it makes it really, really easy to get these things in place. The organisation is probably the hardest one, where you're creating rules for everything that comes in, and you need a PA or an admin team to help you kind of support that and set that up. But you do it bit by bit on an ongoing basis. I still create rules relatively frequently as new stuff comes in. But the key thing is that, business, I always go back to the 3 pillars of growing and scaling a business. Systems and processes. You will have to be involved in these in some capacity. You probably know most of them for your business already, but it's setting them up so others can do them, okay? It's the only way you can kind of safely step away from things. Businesses are built on systems and processes, and when you embrace that, it'll take you to the next level. 2, people. You need to bring people in. If you haven't got anybody yet, obviously it needs to be financially sustainable, but you can get somebody for a few hours a week for £3 to £4 an hour. Even those few hours a week are going to make a massive difference to the stuff that you have to do. So there's no real excuse if you can't afford a few quid to bring some administrative support in to help you get started with your outsourcing and delegation process and help you start putting these things in place. If you can't afford that, you're never going to succeed in business. Okay, so it's a problem that you're going to need to overcome if you want to succeed, in my honest opinion. And then the review side of things is your agenda. Okay, if you put too much on it, it'll become overwhelming. Okay, you're trying to avoid stress, overwhelm and anxiety, so set yourself a realistic expectation of what you're going to accomplish. Remember the 60-40 rule. Okay, whatever you think you're going to accomplish, you will accomplish 60% of it. 40% of the rest of the time will be taken up from distractions and things, no matter how productive you are. The best people might have 30% of their time taken up by distractions, but it doesn't matter. Being aware of this is what makes you productive, rather than thinking, I need to be 100% productive, because that doesn't exist. And I think once you understand that, again, it's absolutely game changing. And then the do side of things, do and delegate. Okay, remember prioritization. You need to focus on stuff that is going to be, it's going to be taking your business to the next level. You need to do stuff that a business owner does. Okay, not the stuff that somebody else can do. Okay, nobody else has your vision. Nobody else can drive your business to the level that you want to drive it to. And if you're not working on the activities that's going to take that business there, and you're too busy faffing around with clearing out spammy emails, it's going to take you a lot longer to get there, if you ever get there. So bring in some support, use a prioritisation metric, whether it's projects, whether it's the green dot model, green dot, red dot process, or whether it's Eisenhower's, productivity matrix of important and urgency, whether you utilise that one, that's another good one. But whatever it works, you need to have a way to ensure that you're doing the highest value work that's going to take your business to the next level. So hopefully this has given you a lot of inspiration to crack on with this. If you're not using something like this or doing it already, you have to. I don't think there's any other way, because you will, if you don't have these systems in place, you will, however you slice and dice it, be spending the best, all of your most productive hours doing lower level work. Okay, this is you have to have this in place. I just don't think there's any other way. If you're doing all this stuff yourself, you're not doing the most important things to drive your business to the next level. So please take inspiration from this. It's not going to happen overnight, but how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, and that's the process here. You put rule after rule into place, bring people in place, have this, start at capture and collect. Have you got these things? I capture everything. You've got video, you've got voice, you've got automation, you've got scanning devices, you've got all sorts of technology, email inboxes, help desks, you've got call answering services, you've got all these things at the tips of your fingers that you can put in place to capture everything super easily. Okay, so get those in place to begin with. Then work on, once you've got that process in place, creating your rules and getting someone processing this information. Just one rule at a time. Don't set them all up immediately. As stuff hits your master to-do list, create rules for it, and you'll see less things hitting your master to-do list. Okay, and then review, give yourself realistic agendas linked to prioritised works. Okay, 60-40 rule there. And then to finish off, do what you need to do, but delegate everything else. So again, link it to the importance of prioritisation via project, or whether you use a prioritisation model, but do it just to start pushing stuff out that you don't need to do, so you're only focusing on the high level stuff. So that's pretty much it today. As always, if you've got any questions on this, drop me a comment. I'll respond to everyone. If it's a bigger topic, I'll do a separate vlog episode and tag you in. Do check out the link in my bios where you can keep up to date with my journey to raise £1 million for children's charities by vlogging on consecutive days, a distance of 1 lap around the world. And as always, my content is always about my passions, which are entrepreneurship and running, and how they can help people overcome the emotions of stress, overwhelm and anxiety by using exercise, in my case run vlogging, as a release mechanism to kind of clear your head, process what's kind of gone on in the world, gain clarity and refocus. And that's where the cord model becomes so important. And if you don't have this process in place, pressure builds in the form of stress, and it's like pressure that builds in a pipe without release valve. Okay, and those pressures are going to build and build. If you don't clear them, they'll get too many things in there. This is the capture and collect stage. You'll be too overwhelmed if you don't have the organised section in place to kind of process them and clear them. What's going to happen is those pressures are going to evolve from stress to overwhelm. We talked about overwhelmed having too many things to do. Okay, so the reviewing side of things streams down what you need to do on a daily and weekly basis. And if you don't relieve it then turns to panic and anxiety. And again, when we're at the do stage here, you're freezing, you're procrastinating because you're panicking. Okay, so you've really got to make sure you have something in place to relieve these pressures. And I've been there before. I've lost multiple businesses because of this. I've lost business partners because of these inabilities to manage these emotions, and I've also almost been bankrupt. And it's a horribly dark place, and I wouldn't wish it upon my worst enemy. And there's no coincidence, in the last 11 months of doing my running vlog, I've made more progress than I have done in the previous 4 to 5 years. So this stuff really works.